Okay, so first we're going to do some review of your polar equation. So we're going to learn how to graph your polar equation because this is very important in determining the area of the bounded regions. So, especially if we're going to solve the overlapping areas, so it's important that we know how to graph your polar equations. The next is once we know how to graph your polar equations, so that's the time that we can now solve your areas bounded. So for this meeting, we'll just focus more on how to graph your polar equations. All right, so as you can see in the screen, so the left graph here is the rectangular coordinate system. So this is the rectangular coordinate system. And then this is represented by the x and y coordinate. So for example, I have a point here. So this point here is represented by 1, the one direction in the x-axis, and then 1 unit direction in the y-axis. Okay, so that's how you represent your points in the rectangular system. So on the right side, so as you can see, it's circle, circle, no? It's in a radial form. So this is the polar coordinate system. And the coordinate points is being represented by r. That's the radial distance from the origin. And then displaced by a certain angle or degree of angle. So for example, this one is your point here. So as you can see, the distance going towards that point from the origin is 2, diba? As you can see, the circle is 2. So meaning this will be 2. And then the angle, as noticed, so from the x-axis going to that point, so that's your angle. And it's pi over 3 or 60 degrees. So usually in polar coordinate system, we'll be utilizing the radian mode. So meaning our angles are in pi. So if degrees, yeah, so 30 degrees, 60 degrees, so on and so forth. So the difference between the two systems, as you notice, so of course, if you want to have the same point, so let's say muna siya 45 degrees na siya ganina, di ba? So if you want to have the same point, so let's say ano siya is 45 degrees muna siya, di ba? Kaya 1 and 1. So if this is the point here, diba? Dili siya 1 dahil kay the square root of which is kwan siya, square root of 2 rin siya. So let's try to find another point na maka-represent na niya. Okay, so let's say kanilang kwan 2 dire sa, 3 dire sa 90 degree angle. So on this point, on the rectangular system, this is 0 and 3. 0 displacement in the x-axis, and then 3 units displacement in the positive y-axis. So if in polar system, so let's say this is our point here. So that's the same point coming from the rectangular system. So instead of 0, 3, so we now represent this one as 3 and then pi over 2. So the radial distance, so if you come to think of it, so let's say you are starting with the x-axis. So let's say nakahigda inyong lapis diha or ball pen going towards the 3 mark. Then you displace your your radius or your radial distance 90 degrees counterclockwise, diba? So muna siya. So meaning, nanadiri inyong point. So muna siya ang difference between the two system. So we have the same points, but it is being represented by two different coordinate system. So if you want to know how to convert to rectangular to polar system, so just review it for yourself. But the main point here is that, for example, you have this. So ato lang i-derive diri para makita ninyo. So let's try to erase this point. So let's use another color. So let's say this is your point here, and this is the x and y direction. So if you want to convert this one into its corresponding rectangular units, so again, if we try to break this one into its triangular components, this will be the y component, this will be the x component. And again, since we are measuring counterclockwise in your polar system, so let's say we're going to place our theta here. And then usually this is our r in our polar system. So notice that we have incorporated the two systems in one graph. So I think in Desmos you can choose whether you're going to have a grid like this, rectangular grids, or your radial grids in Desmos. So I think you just have to go to settings, and then ana siya murag patong grid lines na options. Then I think you're going to choose between two circles na option. So one is inani nga mesh type, and then the other one is circular option sad. So just try to explore the Desmos site. So if you're going to relate the rectangular and polar system, so it's very easy because you can just use Pythagorean theorem. So if you want to look for r, so you just have to use Pythagorean theorem. So r is equal to x squared, square root of x squared plus y squared. Then if you want to look for tangent, so it's very easy also. So you're going to have tangent theta is equal to x all over y. And then to look for theta is you're going to get the arctangent of y over x day. That's opposite side all over adjacent side. So bali siya. So this will be y all over x and then y all over x. So this is from rectangular to polar. So how about polar to rectangular? So polar to rectangular. So since we are given the r and the theta values, so what we need to do is we're going to look for x and y components. So shortcut is this will be the formula. So r cosine theta, that's your value of x. And then for y is r sine theta. I think it's very understandable why it's cosine for x, because that is adjacent side all over hypotenuse. And then for y component, that will be sine function because it's opposite side all over the hypotenuse. So this is from rectangular to polar. Excuse me. And then this is polar to rectangular. So mana siya, but I think we don't have to convert something in the exam, because most likely what will come out in the exam is, I think, only one problem on polar system. Of course, we need to be prepared on on how you can answer this type of problem. All right, so do you have questions so far? Okay, so I think there's none. So let's try to proceed with the next slide. So now is we're going to have a review on how to sketch the graph of different polar equations. So medyo review siya, or maybe for some it may be a new topic. But again, I think mas easy siya i-graph compared to your rectangular system. So we're going to be graphing 6. So hopefully we can finish by 12 or before 12. Okay, so let's start with number 1. So for number 1, so let's use different colors lang para. For number 1, that is r equals 2 times 1 plus sine theta. All right. So how do you graph this equation? Is, of course, we're going to do this manually. So you'll be needing your calculator for the graph. Okay, of course, we'll be dealing with trigo function, diba? So before anything else, so we need to set up our calculator in such that your calculator is in degree mode. So how do you do that is we're going to click shift and then set up, and then lastly is your number. I think in Casio it's number 4. So you have a option there, number 4, and then rad. So for other calculators, so I think you just have to explore your calculator if it's not Casio, but for Casio it's under the setup option. So shift setup, because so you need shift because setup is in yellow color. Yeah, after achieving your radian mode, so in your screen, you'll notice that instead of letter D, so ang nakabutang dia is R na. And then ay murag math dia ang kuan, di ba? So this is the radian mode. So again, we're going to utilize radian mode because we'll be using our degrees in radian aspects. So dili siya degree aspects. Okay? So let's start off with getting our theta. So we're going to create a table, then R on the right side. Okay, so since we are going counterclockwise, so we'll start with 0 first, and the next is pi over 6. So by 30-degree angle. So up until you reach, so circular up until you reach 2 pi again. So ano na siya pag-graph sa inyong polar equation. So starting from 0, then rotating counterclockwise up until you reach the 2 pi angle again. So one full turn or full rotation of sa angles niyo. So this is 0 and then pi over 6, and then pi over 3, Then next is pi over 2. Then 2 pi over 3. 5 pi over 6. Then next is pi. 7 pi over 6. 4 pi over 3. And then 3 pi over 2. Then lastly is 11 pi over 6. So we won't be including 2 pi because 2 pi is equivalent to 0. Diba? 2 pi or 0 muna siya. Okay, so once you have created your table for your values of R, so this is the time that you're going to use your calculator again. So magmano-mano mo input ana sa inyong mga values. Okay, so starting off with So starting off with 0 or 2 pi, so 2 times 1 plus sine 0, that will be equal to 2. And the next na po is pi over 6 or 30 degrees. So again, don't use 30 degrees because we are in radian mode. So use pi over 6. So this will be 3 for the 30-degree angle. Then pi over 3 or 60 degrees. So input na po mo sa calculator, that is 3.732. The next is 90 degrees or pi over 2. So input na po sa calculator, so that will be 4. The next is 120 degrees or 2 pi over 3. So that will be 3.732 again. Then the next angle is 5 pi over 6. So that will be 3. Then going towards 100 degrees, 180 degrees. So that will be 2. Then 7 pi over 6 is 1. Then 210 degrees is 0.2. So it's so that will be 0.268. Then 270 degrees is 0. Then 300 degrees is 0.268. And lastly is your 11 pi over 6, which is equal to 1. So medyo taas siya if you're going to plug it in the calculator sa tagsa, di ba? So plugging in first 2 pi and then or 0 and then pi over 6. So it will take you a long time to determine the different values of R. So another method in determining the values in an easier manner is that, so I'm going to give you calculator tricks now. So one way, so murag dili siya the fastest way, but napay mas faster, but I'm going to show you first the other method lang sa para you know how to use your calculator. So notice in your calculator, if you have this button calc, so you can utilize this function. So what you need to do is that Ako sa ikuha ng calculator. So what you need to do is in your screen is you're going to input your equation first. So it will be 2 then times 1 plus sine. So instead of theta, so we're going to use alpha x because I think the default variable for the calculator is always x variable. Okay, so once you have plugged in your equation in the screen, so the next step is for you to press calc. So after pressing calc is na siya imong gawas nga murag question na, di ba? So after pressing calc is what will appear in the screen is x question mark and then there's a value 0 on the lower right. Diba? So it is asking for the value of your x. Diba? Mga x, wala man yung value, di ba? Kay char lang. So so x is that we're going to look for the value of x. So of course we're going to start with 0, then going towards 11 pi over 6. So after approaching this screen is you're going to press a 0 and then equal sign. So 0 and then the equal sign. So what will appear in the screen is we're going to have 1 plus sine alpha x, and then on the lower right it will be the answer. So what makes this quicker is that once you press equal sign again, is that it's going to ask it's going to ask again for the value of your x. Ba mga x ng buhay nyo? sorry. So again, it's going to ask for the value of your x again. So katong mga dagag x kana pili ni yung function. So again, it's going to ask for the value of x and then plug in the next value, which is pi over 6. So pi over 6 and then equal sign again. So what will appear is again the equation. So let's say 2 times 1 plus sine alpha x, and then the next answer is is 3. Diba? So again, don't forget that your calculator should be in radian mode. So equal sign again up until you reach 11 pi over 6. And you can generate this one in a much faster way. So muna siyang one method na sad. So the calc option. So one is the manual method. The next is the calc method. And I'm going to teach you the next faster option. So the third one will be the fastest approach among all options. So this is the table mode. So table mode. So okay ra there is a right screen, no? So I hope you can follow. So to use the table mode is that we're going to go to mode. So once you press mode, there will be a bunch of categories that will be presented in the screen. So I think that's 1 to 8. Or I don't know for other calculator brands if it's 1 to 8. Basta na siya yung mga different mga options na presented sa inyong screen. So look for the table option. So I think in Casio 991 ES Plus or ES alone. That will be number 7. So you press 7 because that is the table mode. So I think muna siyang ma-appear sa screen. So 7 semicolon table. So once you are able to press the table option in the screen, ang ma-appear sa screen is it will ask you for the value of f of x. So take note that again the default variable for your calculator is the variable x. So that's why it's the function of x. So how are we going to set this up? So of course you plug it in your calculator. So 2 times 1 plus sine and then alpha x. So muna siya yung ibutang sa inyong screen. So meaning if you're going to place side by side our original equation, so this is 2 times 1 plus sine theta, and then this will be our f of x. So the f of x is our r because that's the function of x. So meaning whatever value of x we have here is that will be the r value. So this is 2 times 1 plus sine alpha x. So notice that your r is your your f of x. Then your theta is your variable x. So again, if you have this one in your screen, so you plug it in your calculator in such that your theta is alpha x or the variable x, because we don't have any theta variable in the calculator. So after plugging in your equation, so again that's 2 times 1 plus sine alpha x. So after plugging in the equation, so equal sign. So what will appear in the screen is it's going to ask for the start. So diba start question mark. And then at the bottom part is 1. Bottom right part is 1 value. So since we'll be starting from 0, so press 0 and then equal sign. So 0 and then equal sign. Then what will appear next is again it will ask another question. And, diba? And nasad. Bago lagi nag-start and nasad, diba? So ang end na default in my calculator is 5. So we don't want 5 but we want, so let's say if you want 2 pi, so pwede sa 2 pi. So 2 pi and then equal sign. So after plugging in 2 pi and then equal sign, so what will appear next, so I'm going to write it here lang, is it's going to ask for the step. So what we mean by step, so that will be the interval going towards, so the default number is 1. So what they mean by step is that will be the increments or the, so increments going towards your end value. So meaning from starting, so if you're starting from 0, then your step is, let's say, 90 degrees. So 0, 90, 180, 270, then 360. So you will be only having 5 values, diba? Kaya your increments is by 90 degrees from 0 going towards 360 degrees. So that is what you mean by step. That will be the increments from your starting value going towards the end value. So since in our graph, so as you notice, it's already in 30-degree increments. So meaning our value that we need to input here is 30 degrees, which is pi over 6. So pi over 6, so meaning that will be 30 degrees. So starting from 0, so it will give you the value of 0 first. And the next is pi over 6, then plus 30 degrees, pi over 3, then plus 30 degrees, pi over 2, so on and so forth, up until you reach 2 pi again. Okay, so again, plug in pi over 6, or that will be 60 degrees. I mean 30 degrees there. So once you press equal sign, so it will give you a table. So ako lang ibutang this sa left side, sa number 1. So the table will give you, so mura siya 2 columns. Marag 2 columns ang ibutang sa screen sa inyong calculator. And then x, then f of x. So again, the x parameter is your angle in the screen, and then the f of x is the r value. So this is the angle theta. So notice that on the left, on the first column, it's 1, 2, 3. So that will be represented by the different values that you have calculated, or the calculator has calculated. So 0, then di lang siya pi over 6, but decimal place lang iyang i-present. Then 1.0471, but you're going to have the same values as what we have solved earlier. Ano siyang pinaka-fast na method na akong ma-give sa inyo, ha? Right? So at least na namoy a shortcut method on how to create the graph in a faster pace. So of course, in the exam, so I won't be giving credit for those nga murag ni magically appear ang graph, diba? Kay of course, if ni magically appear ang graph without any evidence, so meaning na is you just copied straight away from Desmos graph or any graphing applications in your browser. So of course, every solution or everything that you have presented in your calculations should be backed up by na-back up siya og kanang mga evidences or procedures. So for example, sa graph is you have this method, and then for the other calculations, basta wala siya ni magically appear, di ba? Kay kinsa may tao nga maka-graph out from nowhere, di ba? So kailangan mo dyan na siya scratch. Yan, labi na if inyong graph kay smooth, di ba? So may man na nga smooth kay inyong graph, kay meaning na kinopya na siya. Okay, if smooth ang graph, so meaning you already have an idea on what the graph will look like, di ba? Muna siyang kanang muna mga masakpan na if i-kopya dito sa So how to graph next? So after the long chika sa pag-determine sa values sa inyong points on your polar system, so the next step is for us to determine the different points. So starting from 0, that will be 2. So 0 is the x-axis. Then this is the first point. So check na ni siya. The next is pi over 6. So that will be 3. So 3, di ba? 3 going towards the 60 degrees. I mean the 30 degrees. So muna siya, di ba? Or the line of action or the line of sight sa inyong pi over 6 na angle. So muna siya ang inyong 3, di ba? So next is your 3.732 for the angle of pi over 3. So pwede na po nyo yung shortcut. So on the line of sight sa inyong pi over 3. So if this is 3, so notice that the increments going towards 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. So meaning it's divisible by 2. So 3, 3.2, 3.4, 3.6, 3.8, and then 4. So 3.7 man ta. So let's say at the middle of this one. And the next is pi over 2, which is 4. And the next is the next angle, which is 3.7. So notice you are creating a pattern in your diagram. So 3.732. And then next is the 3 for 5 pi over 6. The next is 2 for 2 pi. The next is 7 pi is 1. Then 0.268. So at 4 pi over 3, it's, so let's say 0.3 lang. Para dito maglisod. And then 0. Then going back to 0.3. And then next is 1 for 11 pi over 6. Then again at 0 or 2 pi, you're going to have the value of 2 again. So that's how you create your different points. So how to graph is we just connect the points starting from 0, then rotating counterclockwise. So starting from 2, mag-ana siya diri na. Ako lang siyang i-kuha na. I-ana lang, ako lang i-sketch lang. Para murag nindot og dagway. Okay, so that will be your graph. This is the graph for the equation of r equals 2 times 1 plus sine theta. So that's the first graph. So for us to confirm that this is the graph from Desmos, so let me erase this one first. Kinadire itong graph. So I hope that you are able to get the shortcut. So for the next examples, is we'll be utilizing the shortcuts na. So of course, even though it's a shortcut, is that you still have to present the method that you're going to use in your solutions, di ba? Kaya, again, di lang siya magically appeared sa inyong paper nga na namoy graph dito. Murag ka na yung ibuhat is super shortcut na yun na siya, di ba? Okay, so muna siya ang graph. So I think this is the same ba, di ba? So medyo mas nindot lang sa Desmos kay smoother lang iyang curve compared sa ato ang ma-generate kay. So ngano mas smooth ang sa Desmos because of course the increments. So again, if you're going to use the concept of the table aspect, so labi na sa increments. So bali ang iyang increments is very detailed muna. Let's say from starting from 0 is ang iyang increments going towards the 2 pi angle is that, let's say 0.1 baron, di ba? Super gagmay ang iyang mga increments. So muna ma-create siya og smoother curve. Diba? So muna na siya circle, di ba? So a circle is a special polygon because if you're going to zoom the circle, so it is composed of infinite points, di ba? So mura siya kanang daghan siya edges, but since tungod daghan siya points, ma-create siya og kanang smooth curve, di ba? So muna special polygon ang circle. All right. So questions or clarifications regarding this method? Kira or nangatug na mo diya. Okay, so thank you for the response. Okay, naitubag so napaday tao day abinog kung nagyaw-yaw dire. Nagyaw-yaw ako niya way naminaw. Anyway, let's proceed with number 2. I think we'll be able to graph our equations in a faster pace now since we know the shortcut. So starting off with the equation for number 2, that will be r equals it's r equals 2 times 1 minus cosine theta. So again, starting off with the third fastest way, which is the mode 7 or mode table. So mode table, so again, my calculator is FX991ES plus. So pwede rin po siya walay plus kaya I think the 991ES also have this option. So I think most of the calculators have the table option. Parang ang wala lang if it's a lower kuan lang is I think you don't have the kaning mga shift solve na option, which is very important in the board exam. Kaning mga makita mo kanang solve na option kanang naka-yellow na solve niya equal sign. So kaning solve is very important in the board exam kay mas dali mo maka-answer sa inyong equations. Okay, so again for mode, so you have to input your calculator in this aspect. So in your screen, so 2 times 1 minus cosine. So ano man na siya ang default sa cosine sa inyong calculator, so alpha x. So ano siya? So ang dagway sa inyong calculator would be f of x equals 2 times 1 minus cosine alpha x, then of course enclose it with a parenthesis. Okay, di ba sa programming or sa Excel ninyong mga formulas, it won't accept if dili kompleto ang parenthesis, di ba? Sa calculator, ma-accept siya. So basin nalay alteration sa answers depending on how long your equation is. Okay, so again, once you plug this one in your calculator, so go first with the first value or the starting value. So that will be 0, diba? Then, so again, I'm going to write it again here. So start. Okay, para for those of you nga murag pa kayo naka-absorb. So again, what will appear in your screen is once you press equal sign after plugging in your equation, it will go to start screen. Then of course you're going to press 0 because that's our starting value and then equal sign. The next is it will ask for the end value. So usually sa calculator, if nakagamit mo sa table mode and wala pa mo ni revert back to the normal computation sa calculator, so na siya value dia sa previous na table mode na inyong gamit. So 683185307. So if di mo sure if unsa na siya nga value, so just press 2 pi again. 2 pi and then equal sign. So alam mo akurat nga lain na number ang nigawas, di ba? So for example, ang step na sa dire kay line na po na value because that is coming from your previous table calculation. So sa ko screen is 523 blah blah blah, di ba? So again, our increments is in by pi over 6 or by 30 degrees. So pi over 6 and then equal sign. Again, don't forget that your calculator should be in radian mode. Right, so after determining so after pressing equal sign, so what will happen is we're going to have the table now. So x on the first column, then the second column is f of x. So starting with 0, that will be 0 also. Then 30 degrees is 0.5235, that will be 0.2679. Or if di mo ganahan mo follow sa calculator para mas madali ta, so you can create your own x value para di mo maglibog, para mas dali siya. So starting from 0, then pi over 6, and then pi over 3, then pi over 2, and then 7 pi over 6, 4 pi over 3, 3 pi over 2, 5 pi over 3, then 11 pi over 6 na. So 0.2679, 1, 2, then 3, and then 3.732, 4, then 3, 2, 1, and then the last one is 0.2679, and of course going back to 0, which is 2 pi. Alright, so once you have this table, so you can now start graphing, di ba? So kung tanawin niyo, paspas kita na human, di ba? Okay, so 0, 0 first. Then at 30 degrees is we have 0.26 or 0.3. So let's say this is 0.3. The next is 1 for the 60-degree angle. So 1. Then 90 degrees is 2. 120 degrees is 3. Then 150 degrees is 3.7. So let's say this is 3.7. Then 4 for 180 degrees or pi. The next is 3.7 asad. Then 3. And then 2 for 270 degrees or 3 pi over 2. And then 1. And lastly is 0.26 or 0.3 lang na para mas dali siya i-place sa calculator, sa graph niyo. So once you have all the points, so again you start from 0, then graph it counterclockwise. So starting from 0, and the next point is 30 degrees, then 60, then 90, then going towards medyo wala matarong ang kwanda. So muna siya ang graph. So this graph again is your r equals 2 times 1 minus cosine theta. Alright, so if you're going to compare it with the Desmos graph. So let me erase this one. So pasensya na nandukdok speaker sa kay nagtrabaho dire. Okay, so this is the graph from Desmos. Okay, so let's proceed with number 3. So for number 3, our equation is r equals negative 2 sine theta. So again, table mode. So let's try to use the shortcut right away that we have the values now. So again, what you'll be plugging in the calculator is f of x equals negative 2 sine alpha x. Okay, so again, we can create our own table so that we can para mas sayon siya para nato. So x and then f of x. So again, starting from 0, then pi over 6, pi over 3, pi over 2, then 2 pi over 3, 5 pi over 6, pi, then 7 pi over 6, 4 pi over 3, 3 pi over 2, 5 pi over 3, and then 11 pi over 6. So we have 0 and then negative 1, then negative 1.732, then negative 2, negative 1.732, negative 1, 0, 1, then 1.732, 2, and then 1.732, and then 1. Then going back to 0. So starting off is we have 0. So next is negative 1. So notice that we have negative 1 value for pi over 6. So what will happen is that if you're going to look at the line of sight of pi over 6, so this is the line of sight or the line of action of the angle pi over 6. So this point here is positive 1, diba? So to be able to get the negative 1 point, so the negative 1 point is not there is sa other side, diba? This is negative 1. Diba? It makes sense, diba? So mura siya ang inyong x-axis. So for example, this one is positive 1 in the x-axis. So ang negative 1 is nasa sa pikas, diba? So maragana ra po siya for pi over 6. So the radial distance is pi over 6, but since it's negative 1, so the point is on this aspect, na siya sa pikas side. Wala siya sa positive part sa inyong pi over 6 na line of action. So na siya sa pikas side, di ba? So muna siya. The next is negative 1.7 na sa ta. So again, if this is positive 1.7 sa inyong pi over 3, so ang negative portion is on the opposite side of its line of action. So meaning na siya diri dapita ani. Okay, so let's erase the other point, the other point. So next is pi over 2 na sada. So 2 siya but negative 2. So meaning na diri ang point. Then 2 pi over 3. So we have the same point. So that will be 1.7. So if this is positive 1.7, so ang opposite niya is the other point, the other line of action, kay negative man. So this is the point here. The next is negative 1. So again, if this is 1 from your 5 over 6 pi nga line of action, so this is the one here. Then going back to 0 for pi. So next is 7 pi over 6. So 7 pi over 6 is 1. So the same point. So meaning, kani siya nga point is being governed by two coordinates. So 1 is itong pi over 6. So negative 1 and then pi over 6. And the other point here is 1 and then 7 pi over 6. So that's the same point. So also for the this one, if this one is being governed by negative 1.732 and then pi over 3. So the other point for this one is 1.7, the positive counterpart. Then the angle is 4 pi over 3. So same goes for the other point, di ba? Okay, mo-follow naman siya. So kani siya is negative 2 and then pi over 2. Then the positive counterpart is 2, di ba? Coming from here. Then 3 pi over 2. So muna siya ang direction sa inyong kuan. So this one is negative 1.732 for the negative aspect. So coming from 2 pi over 3 nga radial angle. Then the positive value for this one is 5 pi over 3. So same goes here for the other one. That will be negative 1 and then 5 pi over 6. Then the positive counterpart of this one is 1 and then 11 pi over 6. So again, you just have to go to the other side of the line of action of your angle if you're going to have negative value for your radial distance. So you can just imagine sa x-axis, diba? So on the right side is the positive portion, on the left side or on its opposite side, that will be the negative values. So same goes for here. So we now graph your equation. So most likely kani siya nga graph is a circle. So circle ni siya. So di lang siya circle, mura siya piatos kay gagmay lang tag points, diba? But if we're going to have many points that we can solve, so may mo siya circle. So again, this graph here is being governed by r equals negative 2 sine theta. So we can erase this one so that we can see the graph being created by Desmos. So kung tanawin niyo, circle siya, di ba? Perfect circle. So ato is murag piatos kay murag kita ka ng limited on points. Okay, so I hope that you have understood on how to graph if you have a negative value of your radial distance. So again, that will be just on the other side of the line of action of your angle. So the right side is always positive, the left side of the origin is always negative. So maskin mag-tilt-tilt pa na yung angle, so going up is positive, going down is negative. Basta you get my point na. Okay, so let's proceed with number 4. So we have r equals 1 plus 2 cosine theta. So again, if you plug this one in your table mode, f of x equals 1 plus 2 cosine theta. Okay, so let's try to graph immediately because we're running out of time. So it's 11:38, so we need to finish the other problems also para makita nyo ang graph. Sige, ato lang isuwat para madali. So ako lang ikuha na i-degree mode na 0, 30, 60, 90. Ako lang sa inana para madali ta og suwat kay murag duay kita magsuwat sa kuan gud sa pi nga version. Na 270, 300, 330, then 360. So this will be the angle theta. This will be called alpha x. So let me correct this one first. This is x value and then the f of x. So again, 1 plus 2 cosine alpha x. So again, if you have used the table mode prior to this item, so murag na-store na ang previous start and step values. So this one na siya. So 3, then 2.732, then 2, and then 1, then 0, then negative 0.732, negative 1, negative 0.732, 0, 1, 2, 2.732, and then 360 degrees is 3, which is equal to 0 again. So 0 starting from the 0 plane, 0 angle plane, or the x-axis, that is 3. Then 30 degrees is 2.7. So let's say this is 2.7. The next is 2. And then 1. Then 0 for 120 degrees. Then going back to, so we have negative, so negative 0.7. So again, if this is 150 degrees, so let's say 0.7 is on this portion here. So going to the other side, this is the negative aspect. So positive aspect, then negative aspect. So it's on the other side of the angle. Then negative 1. So pi, so 180. So if this is 1, then going to the opposite side that's 1. Then 7 pi or 210 degrees is, let's say, still negative. So going to the other portion. So this is the point here. Then you have 0 again, and then 1 for 270 degrees. So this is 1, then 2, then 2.7, then going back to 3. So if we're going to graph this one, again starting from 0. So ako lang siyang i-dash-dash kay 1. So mara siyang mutuyok na. Magpaypay na, magpaypay. Maglisod kayo mag-graph jud if pina-graphing tablet pa jud ang gamit. Samot na if graphing tablet, diba? Say mouse lang ang gamit. So this is r equals 1 plus 2 cosine theta. So this is the graph being generated by Desmos. So di ba pati lang ato ang sa Desmos kay nindot lang. Right, so let's go to number 5. So number 5 is we have r squared equals 25 cosine 2 theta. So medyo mag-convert pa taan because since we are presented with r squared and I think ang nasa calculator is f of x. So what you need to do is you just have to take the square root. So this becomes r equals 5 square root of cosine 2 theta. So I don't know if napaba na siya identity ang inyong cosine 2 theta, but I think maragmana na siya, di ba? Di na siya ma-simplify further. Okay, I think it's cosine squared minus sine squared theta. Nya murag di gyapon siya ma-cancel out ang radical symbol, di ba? Medyo mapugod siya og kanan ni. Okay, so again, you need to help your calculator a bit so that you can solve the equations. So para mas dali sa calculator makasolve. Diba? So again, what you need to plug in your calculator is f of x is equal to 5, then square root of cosine 2 alpha x. Or pwede sad para dili siya kuan, di siya libog sa calculator, so you can do this in this aspect also. 2 alpha x. Okay, so again, x against f of x. So ako lang isuot diri sa right side para magawas dito ang graph para dito mag-sig erase. So again, 5 square root of cosine 2 alpha x. So 0, 30 degrees, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180, 210, 240, 270. So hindi siya mao nga pagsuwat ha. Ako lang siyang ginani para paspas. Okay, we're running out of time. So starting with 5 and then so magdito ka butog 5, no? And then 3.5355 and then may error siya, no? So we have error, then error, error, Then going back to 3.5355, then 5 again, then 3.5355, then error, so triple error, then 3.5355, and then lastly is 5. So in graphing this equation, so let's say this one is R5 lang, kaya marag out of boundary na ta sa atong graph. 5 and then 3.55 for 30 degrees. So 3.55, so let's say this is the point here. Then error siya, diba? Going towards 100. So 150 degrees, it's 3.55 again. So 3.55. Dire speak us tayo. Ibat ako. The next is 5. So let's say this is our 5 lang. Then again 3.55 again. Then error going towards 330 degrees. That's still 3.55, and then going back to 5. So if you're going to create a graph, maragaan na siya. Let me use another color. So medyo putol siya because we don't know the values of the other graph, diba? Kaya putol man siya. So atong ma-achieve ra so far is inani pa nga graph. Okay, error man siya. So if the other angle, so from 60 degrees going towards 120 degrees, kay error siya. Also from this angle, error siya. So meaning ana, marag mulabang ra diri ang graph. So if this is the boundary, if mo na siyang boundary sa inyong kuan, okay, let's speak as tayo. Na if mo na siyang boundary sa inyong lines, so pasabotan na, di siya mo cross over that particular region. So most likely ang inyong figure is mura siya kanang inaanara ko to murag asymptote, di ba? Murag asymptote bitaw na. Di ba mo inaana mag di siya mo touch sa kaning line of action sa inyong kaning angles nga error. Na so murag mo na siya kanang infinite loop og dagway. Ana siya. So di siya mo touch or di siya mo go over sa kanang boundary. So if you have other angles for this point, so murag na siya ang dagway. So basta as long as it won't be crossing over this angle here. Kay error man siya, di ba? Murag na siya ang dagway sa inyong graph. Yeah, man siya ang graph, di ba? So again, since error ni siyang region, so notice na wadyo nilabang nga point over that particular area. Same goes here also. So ang points is being bounded only diri dapita, di ba? So ang mga points diri ra kutob. So there are no points in this area. Na muna error siya. Alright. So for the last number is we're going to have r equals 1 all over 1 minus 2 sine theta. So again, if you plug this one in your table mode, f of x equals 1 all over 1 minus 2 sine alpha x. So again, x against f of x. So 0 going towards 360 degrees. So again, this is not the correct method. So you need to write the radian mode jud na angle. So kani siya is pinaspasay lang kay para makaabot ta sa before 12 kay basta ni gutom na mo. So ako igutom sa ko. Alright, so again, plugging in the equation 1 all over 1 minus 2 sine alpha x. So we have 1 and then 30 degrees is error, negative 1.366. The next one is negative 1, then negative 1.366, then error. Then for 180 degrees, 1.5, 0.366, 0.333, 0.366, 0.5, and then 1. So starting with 0, that will be 1. 30 degrees is error. So there's no point along this point here. 60 degrees is negative 1.4. So let's say if this is 1.4, so going on the opposite side, that's 1.4 here. Then 90 degrees is negative 1, so 1 is then going towards the opposite side. That will be negative 1. Then 150 is, 120 first, 1.4 again. So 1.4, then going towards the opposite side. And then 150 is error, so again, ang error na to is kanina. There's no points here. Okay, error ang ikaw sa calculator. So we have 1 here. Then 210 is 0.5. 2, then 4, then 0.5. Realize because it's 2.5. 240 is 0.4. So let's say muna siya 0.4. Then 270 is 0.33. Then 0.4 na sad. Then 0.5, 330 degrees. Then going back to 1 again. So most likely, ang inyong graph is nani siya. So let's use another color. Then ana siya dire. So again, since there are no points here, meaning di mo labang ang points in this direction, kay puro man siya error, so ana siya dire, marag sumpay siya pa doon dire. Marag asymptote siya sa inyong error nga value. Ana. So marag ana po siya ang opposite end niya. Because mura man siya kanang hyperbola, di ba? So marag makingo kung hyperbola siya, so marag from experience siguro, because since we are converting this from the rectangular system, so marag gibawon ko sa dagway nga marag hyperbola siya. And this is the one from Desmos. So notice that there are no points beyond pi over 6 kay error man siya, di ba? Error siya on this region. So meaning na if error siya on this region, so meaning also on this counterpart here. So meaning na wala na say points after this point. Wala siya kanang hyperbola, di ba? So that's how you graph your polar equations. So do you have questions or clarifications so far regarding this topic? Okay, so Nana. So, kuhaan na. Magtubag na dyan, no, kay gutom na. Sige. So, next meeting is we're going to discuss next on how to graph how to determine the area bounded by your polar equations.